Tell me the story of General Robert E. Lee.
The story of him. Did you say?
Tell me about Robert General E. Lee.
Yes. Well, he was there to inspect the ports, I say, and he just ran up to see us for a minute because the car was ready, the steamboat was ready to carry him on down to the ports below. And so he ran up to see us, and I told him I'd waited about an hour to see him. And he had charming personality, and he said, the lady says, if I'd known that, I'd been willing to wait several hours to have met you, or to meet you, or something that way.
Tell me the start of the Civil War at Fort Sumter.
Tell you about what?
Tell me the start of the Civil War at Fort Sumter.
The start?
Yes.
Well, it was, they came up, first I remember of it, was there came a telegram from Brooklyn Navy Yard, written by somebody with our friends, and says there's a steamer called the Star of the West that's leaving for Brooklyn Navy Yard to reinforce Fort Sumter. Keep a sharp lookout. That was all. Well, you don't know, but Morris Island just filled then with our boys in the ports, all up and down.
Was the first shot rifles or cannons?
Oh, the cannons. First I saw, because we went down, we were up at the window place, and Belvedere, and when time I got down there, the cannons had gone several times, we'd heard several cannons before we got down there to the, where we could see the balls. We could hear them perfectly from the very first, and we went right straight. And so that's all I can tell you about it. I saw after that everything we wanted to see, and we left before we saw very much because we didn't want to see it.
What's the line?
Great-grandmother, tell me about General Robert E. Lee.
What you want to know about? Well, he was brought up there to meet my friend and myself in the Mills house where we were, and the boat was waiting for him. He had no time, and I told him I'd waited about an hour to see him, and he said, well, I would have been glad to have waited longer than that, several hours later, if I to have met you. And so something like that. He had a glorious personality. You felt it was pleasing from the very first, when you first met him. He was remarkable and pleasant man every way.
And tell me about the start of the Civil War at Fort Sumter.
Well, that was when the Star of the West was sent out to Brooklyn Navy Yard to reinforce Anderson, who was a United States officer that had charge of the head of Sumter. And when found that, Anderson thought it was his duty, of course, to hold it. And our boys thought it was their duty to take it before the Star of the West got down there with the reinforcements.
Was the first shot rifles or cannons?
Oh, cannons. I never heard of a rifle shot at all. If there was a cannon, if there was a rifle, it was before I got down there to the battery. Because I never heard of a rifle shot at all. It just cannons and smoke every time the cannon would boom, and the ball, you couldn't see the black balls, was covered with smoke, gray smoke as it come out. Well, now anything else?
All right.
Great-grandmother, tell me about General Robert E. Lee.
Well, he was a man of wonderful, pleasant personality. I'll say that for him. And he ran up to make our acquaintance, and then he couldn't wait but a minute because the boat he had to leave on was blowing for him then, they said. And so he didn't, just a minute, he had to talk to us. So I really saw very little of him then. But he was very charming every way. His personality was very pleasing.
Weren't you visiting at Charleston?
No, I was was a bride there. That was my home then. My husband was raised there, and he graduated the Citadel there, and had charge of those big military companies there, some of them all his life. He didn't know it. He was one of the best drill officers there was. And that's the reason he had a good place, you understand, in the early part of it.
And tell me about the start of the Civil War at Fort Sumter.
About the start of it? Well, that was when I suppose when the telegram came that there was a boat called the Star of the West that was leaving Brooklyn Navy Yard with reinforcements for Sumter. Keep a sharp lookout. That was the first bugle note. And I had that and I gave it to the Atlanta Library. Afterwards I looked at it. I saw several things about it like that. And I said, well, I've got the very first note of the war. And on that.
Was the first shot rifles or cannons?
Cannons, all I never saw and heard in a rifle store. Guns were too little for a time like that. They were guns. I mean, cannons. Nothing else but cannons.
Ask a question about the shots and all that. Ask a question about the cannons, whether there were cannons, big smoke, shells bursting, and all that.
Did the shell?
Just say, were there big shells breaking over Fort Sumter?
Were there big shells breaking over Fort Sumter?
They went through it, broke down the flag staff, and I had a great piece of it. My husband brought me. They just knocked some to pieces. Didn't ask him any questions, don't. At last he had to give up. And when he did, then Morris Island troops then just flew over there. They had to put up a line of them right over them. And they flew over there and went in and took what they wanted, at least in the little things like a piece of flag staff. I had a piece this long of it. Just shattered it. I'm not talking that now for record. I'm just talking the truth. What happened?
Go ahead. Go ahead, ask me some more questions. Ask me, weren't you the bride of the Confederate officer?
Weren't you the bride of a Confederate officer?
I certainly was. He had to get permission to come back to where I had gone back home. I'd been spending the winter there with a cousin at Mill's house, a great friend of his, where he met me. And he had to come and get permission to come away from Morris Island to come up home to be married on his birthday. And we came straight back.
Back to where?
Yes.
Back to where?
After where?
Back to where?
Back to Charleston. Straight back. He had to go straight back to the port as he could go. He had just got permission